Yeah, New York Athletic Club.
Yeah, I've been to that.
Bunch of Buckeyes.
Okay, we'll call the
Did you have a
meeting to
little-
order of the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union for Tuesday, January 13th. This will be our monthly meeting for the
It's not.
January.
This is the
Did you
SVSU
send
budget.
some in? Don't you have
Right,
some?
the budget meeting's at 6:15, at 7,
Sorry,
we'll
I'm
go into
sorry.
the other meeting.
Corrected, stand corrected. This is just the budget part of the regular meeting.
All right, Ken, you've been away.
Yeah.
And we changed multiple
I
agendas
have
today.
agenda.
so, yeah.
They are
Okay.
insidious.
Are we supposed to have audit? No.
So that's at 7 o'clock.
That's at 7 o'clock, so this is a budget work meeting at 6:15.
Okay, Rick, you have the money for this one? The information?
money?
The information for this one?
The first thing we're gonna talk about
Have anybody?
is the assessment agreement for North Bennington.
Oh, okay, good.
You wanna?
that handout?
I do have that handout.
Shame on yourself.
So, we had a meeting again this morning of, I think we've had at least four meetings with North Bennington to work on this, since this committee gave the charge to Rick and I to meet with representatives of North Bennington to work out an assessment configuration which we all can come to an agreement to, so. We'll wait to make sure everybody gets a copy. Did everyone get one? Rick, do you want to begin then?
Yeah, so, Ray can, or Bruce can jump in if I go astray. As Jim said, the charge was, at North Bennington's request to look to see if they could offset some of the tech admin costs that they're assessed for. We talked about the reason why we had set that up. They weren't paying for HR, and we charged them for technology. They wanted to look to refine those numbers. So, I'm not gonna read this to you. I get insulted when people hand me something and then read it to me. But, basically, we've come to an understanding that Human Resources Department can be allocated based on district-wide administration, the number of staff district-wide compared to the number of staff as a whole. That percentage, I didn't get a chance to finalize that today. That percentage is just about 10%. So 10%, they would pay their proportionate share of 10% of the Human Resource Department, I guess is probably the best way to say that. They wouldn't pay any part of the rest of the Human Resource Department. And as far as technology is concerned, we clearly identified non-salary and benefit items that belong in tech services, which they don't participate in, and those that belong in tech admin, which they do participate in. Then the final conversation was how much of tech administration salaries, i.e. Frank and his immediate staff, should be allocated to tech services for them not to participate in that. And that was where the majority of the conversation, trying to figure out what that assessment would be. As I requested when we got the original charge, and being a little selfish on my part, although some of my staff don't agree that I did a very good job, I wanted to have a formula that I could clearly understand and apply over time, year after year, to the budget to be able to figure out which numbers belonged where. I think we accomplished that finally this morning, late morning. And it appears to be a complicated formula here in writing, but it's not that bad if you actually look at the chart of accounts.
So what is, I mean, these numbers don't mean anything to me.
Yeah, those are account numbers.
Right.
So, at the end of the day, there's a cost shift of roughly $124,000, because I don't have that HR finalized yet. But it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 10%, right in that ballpark, it's a small number. So roughly $124,000, and North Bennington's assessment next year will be 3.81%. So what they are saving is $4,718.13, of which is picked up by the remainder of the districts, of which Mount Anthony is the largest, who will pay an additional $2,648.41. Bennington will pay an additional $1,283.10. Pownell, $385.35, Shasberry, $368.32, and Woodford, $32.96. So that's the net effect of the conversation. Did I successfully tee that up, Ray?
Yep, seems pretty much what we talked about. Certainly that describes the proposal on this sheet of paper that came out.
I think any one of us would be happy to answer any questions you may
Could
have.
you these two, what bodies, percentage of SVSU district-wide personnel, are those the paras and the sped teacher, is that what that represents?
Where are you?
Under A at the bottom, a proportion of the human resource based on a percentage of SVSU district-wide is that what district-wide personnel are, the sped
No, the district-wide personnel would be me, Jim, Karen,
administration?
Yeah.
In
you
central
know,
office.
when those of us that are everywhere, as opposed to all the SU staff who are largely in your buildings.
So that's the second part then, SVSU personnel are
Yeah.
the teachers and stuff there. Okay. Any other questions of Rick or Ray?
We do have a motion on the bottom, so maybe we should make that motion, and then we can continue the discussion on it.
Okay, someone want to make the motion, Ray?
Well, I guess I should. The motion is that the SVSU assessment streams be amended for FY16 and beyond to have non-operating districts pay a proportion of the human resource cost based on the percentage of SVSU district-wide personnel, which Rick just described, in relation to the total number of SVSU personnel. The second part of this is that tech administration salaries would be paid according to the proportion of budgeted cost of tech administration software, maintenance, and software cost to the total cost of software maintenance and software cost between both sides of the tech thing, tech service and tech administration. Is that correct, Rick? Yep. And that's specified in account numbers, so that it's pinned down to the particular items that we're using as the percentage mark to allocate these costs.
And those are account numbers required by the state, right? So there's no movement.
Right.
Can we have a second, please?
Second.
Second, okay. Now, any discussion anybody wants?
The only thing I would
Yep.
recommend, he said and beyond, I think this should only be a year by year. We don't know what things are gonna change.
Well, I think what is important, though, is that one thing that came up in our meetings, that we don't want to keep going back every year and reworking this formula. So I think that's what is meant by beyond, that the whole thing that we strive to do was to come up with a formula that can be applied every year. Because one of the things we heard from other board members, other SVSU board members, was I don't want to be back here next year with another, well, let's go look at this part and see if we can reduce this. And that's the commitment that we have. I don't know if you want to address that, right?
Well, I had a statement which I don't have to read, but I can read bits of it. And one point that I made, a little paragraph, is the proposal described in this document. If the board agrees to this reallocation proposal, North Bennington will not make this request in the future. You know, that's part of the agreement, really. I did have a fairly succinct sort of description of what we're doing here. The basis of this proposal is to separate services into those not accessible to a non-operating district and its students, even if they're needed, and those that, although they may not be used, are not required in a particular budget year by our district or any non-operating district, are available if they're required. And it's the latter that we would contribute assessment monies to.
And this year's amount is the 124?
Excuse me?
What is this year's amount?
Well, yes, the
46.
amount that is being shifted from shared by all to shared by all with the exception of North Bennington is 124, of which they pay 3.81%, so the net effect is $4,700 and change.
Too good.
Savings to them
Frank?
and cost to the others.
And cost to the others.
Yeah. I thought I made that clear.
Rick, yeah, I heard Shasberry's share and all that stuff. Now, isn't that kind of like a double whammy because all of us pay MAU also?
Well, so does North Bennington, and we would pay it, our citizens would pay it through the MAU tax.
Yes, as part of the blended tax rate, each community will pay their proportionate share of the MAU number.
Yeah, I've heard the discussions and I've listened to them before. I think this is a mistake if we do it. I see it, I heard what Ray said, that, well, this would be the last time, it wouldn't happen in the future. But I don't hold up much for the future as far as funding schools or anything. We have no idea what the states are doing either, and I definitely would not vote for this, but be the board's pleasure.
Well, let me respond that all we're asking for is things that our students in our district are inaccessible to our students in our district. And I think none of us as districts would want to be paying for things that our students cannot benefit from.
Yeah. I guess, are you all set, Ray, or? You're
Yeah,
set?
no,
Okay.
I
Okay.
stopped.
Yeah, I guess, the example I would use to that is like the agency fees with people that don't want to belong to the union, but yet they're taking the money, they're stealing the money from the people that don't want to be in the union anyway. So I mean, I think the whole system is so screwed up that it's, and of course, we have a governor and legislators, and it just seems to getting worse and worse and worse, and we come here, we're gonna vote on things that affects other districts, so that's my 2 cents. I don't know. I just think it gets worse from here.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I just
Yes,
have one
Cindy?
question. But North Bennington still pays a part of Mount Anthony, right? Because they have students there?
Yes, they do. Yeah.
By head count, right?
The taxpayers of North Bennington pay their proportionate blended rate in the tax rate as every other community does. It's not the old MAU assessment to the member districts, it's through that blended tax rate.
Yes, Jim.
Dumb way, it's just not getting through my head. They're paying 3.81% of 124,000?
No, they're not gonna pay 3.81% of 124,000.
So their savings is at 4,000.
Right. And everybody else has to pick up their proportionate
So
share.
we're voting to forgive them 4,000, and we're
Because we shifted 124,000 out of what was in, in administration costs that they, no, I'm confusing myself here. Shifted 124,000 out of an area of the budget that they don't use the services of into an area that they don't, and that's not what, so they're not gonna pay that percentage. And
So the yay or nay here is plus 4,000 to them and minus 4,000 to the rest of us.
I mean, that's one way to look at it, but I look at
The
it.
other way
The other way
around,
around.
Yeah.
the other way around, 4,700 to the rest of us, they say 4,700, not us.
And I don't wanna speak for North Bennington, but,
It's a $5,000 question.
in our meetings, what has come up to them, that their feeling is that they've been paying $4,000 for services in which they don't get. And so it's just a cost shift back, and you might want to explain that better.
Well, it's slightly more subtle than that. We can't get those services, period. What I said earlier was that if we could get them in, and just didn't use them 1 year, we'd be paying for them.
A question, can I ask
Under
Fran-
this
Fran
proposal,
a question?
that's
How does this affect other districts and
You
SUs?
just read them.
So Jim, what the net effect,
No, outside of this group. You're saying the rest of the state this affects?
No.
I have no idea.
Okay. As a president, I thought I was hearing as a precedent.
No, that's, this SVSU itself.
It's a precedent for the way the SU would interact with any non-operating district in the future. In other words, it's formula, but so that they could apply in the future. This is the way it turns out this year, applying that plan.
I was just trying to get perspective.
There's no problem, yep. Any other questions?
Well, this is not a one-year deal, though. This is the formula to go forward
Right.
from here.
Right. These costs will be removed from that side of
And
the
the
system.
deal for that is they won't come back in future years trying to readjust that formula again. So, both sides. Okay, no more questions? All in favor of the motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Against? 1, 2, 3. Passes. 5-3. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your. Thank you for your good explanation.
Okay, next.
Yeah, not enough.
Now that that's put to the side, we can,
We're back to a budget. And Rick has some other handouts for you.
well,
Some of the things you asked for at the last meeting was you want to, and we're going to get to it, is what is the SVSU assessment going to cost to you in each of your own districts? So we have that, and we're also, the other thing you asked is, where is the SVSU assessment broken down to? That's going to be coming around to you. And as you know from our previous meeting, we're at 2.9% increase. So there's also, which one's coming around first, where the increase is?
there's two pie charts coming around. One, showing you the makeup of the total budget and the drivers of the budget, which we've talked about numerous times for many years, but sometimes see it in a picture. That would be the lighter color one. It's called the SVSU FY16 budget breakdown. And you can see the departments, for lack of a better description, that are driving the cost, the overall cost of the budget. The second one that's coming around is a breakdown of the actual increase. And we kind of consolidated some things there. You see that special ed is 49% of the increase. The early childhood program is 37% of the increase, and it goes on from there.
Rick?
Yeah.
Excuse me, question. Are we missing a paper? I thought we asked for a paper that said, what would it be if we went to zero?
We're coming, that'll be the next part, we're gonna get to that.
We have a sheet on it?
We don't have a sheet on it, I have a discussion on it.
This one really surprises me. The high school, middle school has higher sped costs than grammar school. And we have so few kids that would seem compared to what the grammar schools have.
Well, not really, they have roughly half of the population as a whole. So, to me, it would seem logical that it was roughly shared, but, I mean, in any one year, they could ebb and flow depending on, you know, the numbers and the needs of any student, whether at the elementary or at the secondary.
Because I always thought that, well, people use the word, there was a stigma and stuff, and kids didn't want to be or whatever, or be on sped when they get to the high school, so a lot of kids were pushed out of it, or dropped out of it, I should say, and,
I don't think, so Wendy'd have to answer, I don't think that's the case, but Wendy can.
I don't think I understand what was,
I am surprised that the secondary sped is a larger number than the grammar school, and that, you know, I always thought that there'd be more. It seemed like with Bennington, our budget is so high always for sped, I thought it was less for high school, but I guess I was wrong.
yeah, I mean, we still have a lot of students at the high school level and the middle school level. So it doesn't really necessarily, like, I think you said it, it's about split even. If you take the number, because the high school has around 200, the middle school has around 150. So if you add up the BSD, the elementary schools, their numbers are pretty much,
I think it was reported the other way, 200 in the middle school, out of 600, which is a third of the kids here, and I think it was 150 out of,
no, high school is around 200 for special education students, and the middle school has around 150.
so about a 25%.
They're about,
Over 600, and
yeah,
then
350.
about 20% at the high school.
Right. So it's split, it's fairly even.
All right. Any other questions about the first two graphs at all? It's pretty clear as to what's going on here. This one here is all the data, and this one breaks it down. Then we have this large spreadsheet.
Well, that's the assessment streams that, I apologize for being a bit presumptuous, but assuming that you would have approved the prior motion, I created the assessment streams based on that assumption. You have the equalized pupils at the bottom. I think those of you that have been on this board for a number of years, this isn't anything surprising to you. I did color code for ease of reading the assessment streams that non-operating districts do not participate in, both in the percentages down in the middle of the sheet as well as the dollar values up in the top of the sheet. You can follow your assessment streams or your assessment costs per stream. And the other thing you've noticed is this has grown significantly over the years, and based on conversation earlier, hopefully it's grown for the last time. Although that's probably not true based on another conversation we're gonna have later today, but, so at some point, and I don't expect it tonight unless something happens with the budget, but at some point, once the budget is final and we can lock those numbers in place, you'll see this again at a future meeting to actually adopt this, these assessment streams. Because per statute, you need to agree on proportional assessments based on students unless otherwise agreed to by you. So every year we take a motion to formalize that you are agreeing to this assessment stream.
How come at the bottom there's nothing for Woodford for pupils?
Oh, I probably cut them off in the print, in the print area. I apologize for that.
We're not so worried.
So I actually cut off Woodford and total. But,
Rick, does this show the increase on the assessments or just the total assessments?
just the total proposed assessments for next year.
So those are your assessments for this year. The next part that we wanted to discuss, you had asked what the budget would look like at zero, if you kept the assessments to zero. So this is not on a sheet because I consider it pretty sensitive information. And as I said at the last budget meeting, I don't want to publish a list of positions or names, people of where we're going to make cuts, but I can paint the picture for you of where that's going to look. To get zero from this current budget, you need to cut an additional $470,000 out of the SVSU budget. And you go back to your budget breakdown pie chart. Very little or none of it can come, further cuts can come from the special ed portion of this SVSU budget. So you can see what little percentage left that that 470,000 has to come from. So we looked, without naming the positions, we looked at how many positions we would have to cut to get to 470,000. And it's anywhere from 7.5 to possibly 10 positions, depending on what the ultimate cuts would be. And what I say by ultimate cuts, what I mean by that is we haven't vetted these cuts out publicly. So as I say I'm going to cut this position, there is going to be some outcry about that position saying, no, you misunderstand, you can't cut that for this reason, or you cut this one and it is special ed, you're going to lose the revenue stream that comes with that. So you might need to cut 2 to make up for that cut. So that's why 7.5 to 10 positions, at least one cut from every department in the supervisory union, which I think has a devastating impact on how you operate this supervisory union. And let me again state why I don't want to produce that. If you cut the bottom line to zero, then I guess I have to produce that list. To produce that list before I know what the bottom line is, I think has a devastating effect on the morale of people who work here. And I am trying to improve morale in the supervisory union and at central office, and I'm trying to entice people to come and work here for us and want to work and help improve the schools in the supervisory union. And I'm concerned how I do that. We have trouble recruiting teachers and administrators as it is now. And if we needlessly publish a list of positions and people that we're going to cut, unless we're committed to do that, in other words, you cut the bottom line, then I have to do it, as opposed to producing a list. But I'll go as far as telling you 7.5 to 10 positions, and you can see the areas that it's going to have to come from when I tell you that more than half of that pie chart is immune from cuts.
Yesterday I received the Excel edition of the budget, and I desperately tried to get something done today, didn't get it done. But one thing I saw, I was trying to sort it by category, salaries, FICA, health insurance, just by generic categories, not people, where the money was. And something jumped out at me. There's apparently $2 million in contracted services, which is $2 million of salary, I guess, but not to real employees. Is that a place we can look to
Contracted services is almost all special ed for when we send students out of our school district, out of district placement. That's you, and yeah, I'm getting nods that that's correct. So,
There's 20 or 30 line items for contracted services.
And I can speak to special ed. I use contracted services for a number of different things. I use it for safety evaluations when I have to evaluate a student for safety reasons at a school. We use psychologists within the community. I use it for outside evaluations if a parent has requested an outside evaluation, so an evaluation for a special education student that either goes above and beyond what we can do in our, with our people. We use it for outside placements. We use it for paying for part of the, I will say, the NECC program at Molly Stark. Is that money that pays for them is placed in a contracted service because they're not our employees, we contract with another. So those are the wide degree, we use it for counseling services. So it's, again, these are things that are required by IEPs. It's not just something that we have sitting there saying, oh, if we have some money, we'll hire somebody. These are things that we look for to fulfill IEP needs.
I bring it up to get to Mr. Copaine's point about the impact of announcing positions, okay? It's a place that we can, if we have to cut, considering what you're saying too, that, you know, a lot of these are required, but it's a place where we're not kicking out members of the family, if you will. It's something that maybe we can work harder. Say there's a psychologist in town that if we give him all our business, he'll give us a cut rate. You know, we can work harder on the contracted area without hurting our family of employees here. I'm just mentioning that it exists, and it's a big number. I was surprised that it popped out. And it's up considerably year over year, but I know it's the place, Pownell itself we're faced with. Is that where that $80,000 will go for Pownell, is contracted services?
That's where that was.
Yeah.
That's correct.
and that can be one of those areas too,
It's a
that we
brutal
will
number.
lose reimbursement for
Exactly.
what we spend in
Right.
that. So we're in that predicament for every dollar you cut out of there, you're losing 50 cents in a
But if there's
reimbursement.
a psychological organization in town that wants to come with us with a hot deal, not a hot, but, you know, an incentive to give them all our business, that's something we can look at. I'm saying we can look at other things than cutting people. Thanks.
We have looked at others, one of the things we looked at, but it would push costs back to the individual school districts. There are things that are in the supervisory budget, particularly in curriculum and reimbursements like for professional development, that are in the SV budget and not, the SVSU budget and not in your local budget. So all we would be doing is shifting costs. Like say, all right, tuition reimbursement for courses is no longer gonna be in the SVSU budget, and it's gonna go proportionally back to where it's actually getting used. And that's a contractual obligation, so you're gonna have to budget money for it. All we're gonna do is, so we'll reduce the SVSU budget, but your budget's gonna go up. And the same with what we buy for district-wide curriculum, things like Go Math, that it's just gonna show up in your budget and out of our budget. And that, so, did look there, but, you know, I have a very narrow scope that I actually control in this SVSU budget that isn't special ed and early childhood. And
That didn't make any sense because you bill us back, so we pay it
no,
anyways.
not on the tuition reimbursement, no.
No, I mean, on the professional development and stuff. We get billed back for that.
Part of the assessment.
Part of it.
Right, so, you know, he's saying, I'm just trying to correct you.
It's not my understanding of it, but,
It just sounded like it.
you know, that's not the information I was given today, but we'll,
All right.
all right.
All the tuition that's listed in the budget, that's for teachers, or what is that for? There's quite a few lines of tuition reimbursement. What is that for?
For,
Tuition reimbursement?
you know, it's contractual obligation to teachers who take, under the contract, they're allowed.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah,
Take 2 courses a year.
yeah.
You're not looking at the preschool tuition, because there is a sizable amount for our public preschool
I didn't finish what I
partners.
was doing, but when I sorted by, I got a group of tuition that went up quite a bit year over year.
Yeah, ours might be, I'll look, but ours might be
No, I-
tagged as
I was just-
preschool tuition.
I didn't finish what I was doing. I was just looking, trying to take a look at it from a different viewpoint, rather than department by department as, like healthcare is up 10% based on what I saw, okay? Or FICA's up 10%. I mean, it's just different things you can look at.
Yeah, ours are-
Other than early childhood or sped, we could look at it as a electricity site. Thank you. That's all.
Any other questions?
I'm not one of the zero guys either, so I just want to say that.
I do not know how we would function at a zero. I really, I'm speaking honestly here. That's $470,000 additional to be cut. Brings you well below what you need to operate the supervisory union.
I just, personally, I find it hard to believe that with over $12 million in the sped account, that we can't find something to cut. I mean, you know, 12 million is a big number.
What was the sped account when we first started the budget process? I mean, we have been cutting that number. That's the number we're down to.
Right, we've cut a lot, to the point that I am looking and saying, I'm worried about what's gonna come up and what I'm gonna overspend. I'm worried that I'm not gonna be able to provide services for students. I'm worried that I'm not gonna have the ability, if a student comes into our district and I need to switch some resources, that I'm gonna have the things there to make sure that all of our kids are having their needs met. Like, for example, if a student comes in and we need a neuropsych evaluation, I've cut the contracted service for MAU down like $50,000. And I'm worried if I have somebody come in, those neuropsychs cost around $4,000 a piece. And, you know, one or two of those and our money is spent and I don't have any money to go out and do that fifth one or that sixth one that comes up, and I have to go to MAU and say, I'm overspending your contracted service. I mean, these are the things that I'm worried about. I don't know where else I'm gonna find money. I've looked, I've cut supplies, I've cut travel, I've cut equipment, which scares me because we have the SBAC and DLMs that are coming up that we have to have these equipment pieces for to, you know, do what the state has asked us to do. And I mean, I know they're unfunded mandates, but I still have to follow those rules, you know, so I don't know where else I'm gonna get money to cut out of the, you know,
Well,
special ed budget.
Go along with yours, I'm worried that the budget doesn't pass in Bennington, because I see it here at the bottom. Bennington's gonna be paying over 66% of all the bills, so, that's what scares me.
That's based on student that's based on
Yeah,
students.
oh,
Bennington
yeah.
got all the students.
Right, no,
and they should be
that's
paying
why
it.
we have 66%, there's no question, yeah.
So, I mean, I've heard we spend a lot of time talking about these dollars, but I worry about the services that we can't provide in this district and education that's required of the students. And so if we were to focus on putting those efforts out in terms of how we are going to improve student outcome and special ed, reducing special ed needs, and make sure we take care of that, those numbers will go somewhere, as opposed to saying, let's take the dollars away and then the services are gonna improve on their own. I don't think that's the right way to go.
Yes,
Okay, we talked about the 0%. What was it last week? 290?
2.299, yeah.
299. Did that get changed?
295.
Did that get looked at?
295, I'm sorry.
295.
295.
No, we're still at 295.
Okay, it would probably be much easier to drop. It's not, it doesn't sound like.
We did look at what, you said what, 275, was that what you had suggested
Yes.
last?
Right.
Yeah.
So that would be, what would be about another 33,000?
33,000.
33,000, that's what we calculated that would be. You'd have to reduce
And
it.
that's probably more realistic than trying to get to zero.
And we discussed that, and we could do that. We don't have specific line items to reduce to 33,000. Our suggestion would be that you reduce the bottom line by another 33,000, that'll get you at the 2.75, and we will have, so that we can pass the budget. And we, you know, here tonight, one of our concerns and why we move forward with this, and maybe we should adjourn, because we're gonna go into our regular meeting, and you'll notice I did a last minute change on the agenda this evening. That's why you got a redraft. We took off the audit report. They're gonna have the auditors come another week. I took off the superintendent's report.
Early ed.
Yeah, early ed, we took off because they had already given it before. So that we're gonna go back, we're gonna go into our regular meeting. We're going to get the consent agenda and all the other items out of the way, and you'll see we're gonna go back into a budget discussion, because we knew we weren't gonna get this done in 45 minutes. And then hopefully maybe we can have a budget vote, and then we do need an executive session at the end. So my suggestion would be that we wrap up this budget session, and then we'll get back into it as part of our regular meeting.
Before you dismiss or go anywhere, I just need to understand what you're asking. You're asking us to approve the budget at 2.95, and then you will come back and.
No, you can approve it. We'll take 33,000, and that'll bring us at, I think, 2.75, and that's what I would recommend that you approve, if that's what gets the deal done. But I'm just looking at the clock, and I know we gotta start a regular meeting, so.
Rick,
While we're in this session, can I ask Rick a question? If we take $33,000 out, how does that affect the Pownell tax rate?
Depends on where I take it out of. But if it all comes out of the BSD sped services, I would have
Doesn't touch us.
I would have to actually take 66,000 out to get that net effect, and it would only benefit BSD.
That's the part of this whole process
If I take it all out of Frank's salary, everyone gets the benefit.
So it would have to reduce everybody by their percentage that they pay on the assessment. It has to come out of that smaller side of the budget that everyone pays, including non-operating school districts.
which is about 1%. That's about 1% of your.
Right, and that's the exercise we did last time, so.
I personally wouldn't want to go lower than what we got right here. I think $30,000 is something we just shouldn't be wasting a lot more time on right now in
You
this
explain
size
that to
budget.
taxpayers.
You know, and we're gonna go
You're
at
not
the
doing
taxpayer in another way.
You're not doing due
Besides
justice.
SVSU, $30,000 here, and we're spending a whole bunch more time and risk the services that SVSU is talking about trying to produce out here. It just ain't, it don't make sense.
Okay, so, Superintendent asked that we adjourn this business session and then go back into a regular session.
I'll make a
Motion to
motion.
adjourn, all right, go ahead. I'll second it.
I'll make a
Okay,
motion that we adjourn the budget
To a regular
section
meeting and second.
and go into
All
our
in favor?
regular.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, now we're in regular meeting.
In case you don't have it, passing out the last, most recent agenda that we changed earlier today to take out any issues.
Stamp them.
Yeah, we were worried about not having enough time to have a thorough budget discussion.
This bugs the hell out of me.
Okay. Okay, first item will be public comments. Anybody with public comments?
Hi, my name is Lori Mulhern. I'm a resident of Bennington. I'm here before the board to speak, number one, about the upcoming budget decision. I must say that as a taxpayer and also a parent of a special needs child, that when we look at the budget for special education, it is more than just contracted services. This particular educational system has challenges in recruiting staff to hire on hand to provide these services, PTs, which are physical therapies, OTs, occupational therapists, speech and language therapists, and we struggle with that continuously. It could be the pay range, it could be the system as a whole, it could be just that there's just an extreme shortage of these individuals across the state. Just like child psychologists and psychiatrists, they're very hard to find. Most families have to travel long distance, but in regards to the other pieces of the budget, we were looking at, I believe at one time, the board was considering a salary assessment and how we compare to, you know, the national averages and averages in nearby states or similar states. And I don't know if that's been done. And also the turnover rate, I think that was discussed too. And that can also be indicative of bigger challenges and why the budget's so high. And to Karen, welcome back, by the way, to your question in regards to the cost of special ed, the thing is that it's required by law. And Wendy doesn't have a choice. It is part of an educational system until, if the law's going to change, then you'll have a different obligation. However, those services are required, and if they're not provided, the challenge for the educational system is that the parent has a right to due process an administrative complaint, which will invoke probably more fees and legal counsel. So if you don't support it or provide the service, unfortunately, it comes out of a different portion of the budget anyway, because then you're dealing with other issues, and then you're going to have compensatory services to make up for. So it is a big challenge. I also had a couple other things that I wanted to address on the agenda. One of them is the policy that is going to be warned this evening, and one item on the consent agenda. So I didn't know if you wanted me to wait, or if you'd like me to just sort of shoot it out now.
Well, I'll be honest, I was, been sick and I missed the 2 meetings. And Leon, I noticed in reading in the minutes, there's a new policy on people speaking in public session, Leon.
That's correct.
And I just have some guidance from you on what you would recommend, if she has something to speak about issues.
Right, and in that policy, and public comment here section, and we're aware of the fact that if this is on the agenda, policy number 5085, she can speak to her piece right now, which will be less disruptive during the regular meeting, and I would say it that way. And it's the chair is to interpret the actually comments or the needs or the wants of the individual during the public conversation, comment time, and you have the latitude to being able to address it when we come to it at that particular time, or deferring it to a later date by a committee or something to make sure that you understand or get what's being asked, and that you have time to get back to it. So that's basically what that policy allows. It puts some constraints and controls on making sure that when public comments are heard, that we respond to them within a reasonable amount of time.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so why don't you give us the information you want on those, on the policy and
Okay.
consent?
That's fine. On the policy for search and seizure of a student, I have been attending the committee meetings, as Leon knows, for policy development, and I have brought my feedback in regards to those students that may have special considerations in regards to being patted down. It could be a sensory trigger, or it could be that maybe with some children that have unfortunately been abused, they may have other sensitivities towards that kind of protocol, procedure. One of the notations I saw in the policy is that it states, if there's time, for safety reasons, that the individual will be taken to an area to afford them their privacy interest. The term privacy interest is very vague to me. It doesn't really explain anything. The other issue I have with the policy is that an administrator will be patting down the student with another individual. The concern I have is that what training are we asking for? Is there training in the administrative regs required on how to do that, to not only protect the student, but protect the staff member? And also, the individual that's going to be of the same sex as the person, or of the individual being patted down. My special needs son is a male, of course, and his special educator is a female. So it's unclear if they're supposed to be the person who knows most about my son, and they're supposed to be consulted before this happens. There's nothing in the policy that says that. And not only that, all of the SVSU policies need to be revised to accommodate Idea B in regards to any student with a disability or with some sort of special consideration that may need to be taken into consideration due to the maybe trauma that they've suffered. So I think that that's an important piece that, again, I wasn't at the last policy meeting, and perhaps there's one last issue on that, is the information received from the Agency of Ed. I had received contrary information to the information that was provided at the policy meeting that said that the SVSU does not have to include some sort of line item or statement to that effect. And it's gone back and forth several times. So now I'm going to ask the board in writing if they could provide me with a copy of the directive from the Agency of Ed that says you do not have to incorporate that. Because we're going back and forth with this piece, and this affects all of the policies. So I would like to know if I could get a copy of the communication from the Agency of Education to the SVSU that accommodates that. And lastly is on the consent agenda, there's something about a salary on one of the individuals being hired. And I was just wondering, going back to, have we looked at the salary analysis for these job positions? Because we have come across this before, where for the same job, we've paid one person one salary range, and another individual double. And it's for the same job. And I think we have to put our job descriptions into a salary range. And I believe that Dina Atwood was going to do that, help the SVSU with that. But I haven't seen any documentation, and there's a lack of documentation on the website for these meetings. The documents handed out tonight, I didn't see there. Documents for budget meetings, I don't see them. And also for the personnel committee, I don't see them. So I don't know if maybe I'm not looking in the right place, but I would like to see them. And those are my items.
Thank you.
Thank you.
One thing I just, off the cuff, is that when I started teaching, I know I was making X amount of dollars, and a senior teacher next door to me was making twice as much money as me, because in education with the contract, there's variations of how long you've been teaching and your credentials. You got a master's degree and doctor's degree. So you can have people teaching the same exact stuff, the same exact amount, and yet someone making twice as much money, and that's just the way the system works.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to include one little piece on that, but the thing is that if you have a janitorial job, and I don't see how, just because they have maybe more years sweeping the floor, that it's a salary range for the job. It has nothing to do with the individual. If a person with higher training would like to receive more money, they change they look for upward mobility of some kind. If we have a job for someone as a receptionist, even though I totally agree that with performance reviews and things like that, it should be increased, but I don't want to get into a discussion, that's not part of this. I just wanted to also say, I'm not really looking at teacher salary ranges, I'm looking at everyone's salary ranges. So administration, maybe services other than that, so that's the small piece.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other public comments? Okay, seeing none, we have a treasurer's report here, sent electronically for November. December's was, did you folks get the one for December? I don't remember getting the one for, can we have a motion to accept the November treasurer's report?
Second.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. We'll hold off, I don't think we got the December one.
So you're postponing December?
Yeah.
Okay.
Consent agenda. Motion on that?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, again, I noticed on the consent agenda, we have a lot of veteran teachers.
I have a question on the consent agenda.
Yes.
On the on the nominations, I'd just like to point out that, as a board of directors, I think the salary portion continues to be inadequate. We have, I would like to see some sort of number that indicates the budgetary impact of these items. If you look at the salary, real quick, for the assistant superintendent, it says 42,000. If you look at the salary for a title teacher, it's 40,000. But then once you get into the detail, the one is a prorated number, okay? And the other one is the annual number, but there is still a prorated number for 22,000, so they're inversed. So I would just like to see some consideration given on these nomination forms for consistency in the salary. I'd also like to have it to be, for your internal purposes, do whatever you want, but for the board purposes, I think we need to see the budgetary impact. The health, at this point in time, the health care for a teacher can be as much as $15 an hour over their salary. It's a big number. Family health care is over $20,000, and then you have FICA and all these other odds and ends. So I think as a board, as we look at these, it would be helpful to all of us that we know what we're approving from a budgetary, since we're talking about the budget, all right? And this is ongoing, so you have a sense of this one person that says 40, but we're really gonna pay her 22 for the rest of the year, which is fine. We don't even need to know that, because we know there's only half a year left. Okay, so from a board standpoint, we need to know it's a $40,000 job, and whether, if it's health insurance, they gotta add on a factor for that, and what we'll be looking at is a $60,000 number. The other question I did mention to the superintendent I had before, and this is again, just a comment. We were talking about cutting 7 or 10 jobs in the budget and announcing it and stuff like that. The most pain-free way to do this, and it's supposed to also in our districts, is when people announce their retirement. I think that's the time that we just consciously say, yes, we're gonna refill this position, or we're not. There's quite a few retirements here, and I was thinking, at the supervisory, I don't know if I have support for this right now, but the supervisory level, I think we should ask that the superintendent specifically check off whether this job should be filled or not before we look for people to fill it. Yeah, as far as it's obvious we have, all of our budget is people. We keep seeing 80% of the budget is people. So as people retire, we should just take a conscious, objective look whether we're going to continue this job, or maybe look at eliminating it, or consolidating it, or doing something. We can't wait till there's a person in there, because that hurts them. None of us want to let someone go. But there's 10 possibilities here, or 8 possibilities here of things that we can just
I
look at.
couldn't agree with you more that we should look at every retirement and whether we need to replace them or required to replace them. That is a different, and I know you all got that directive from the Secretary of Education. I have copies for you during the budget session. So it isn't more, and it's not just the SVSU. I mean, all boards need to do it throughout the supervisory union, because we do have significant clients, but as often the case, they're a required position, particularly in the special ed area. I do have a question for clarification. I mean, I think the nomination form is pretty clear, and we can talk personally. I mean, we're telling you the budget impact other than health insurance, which we might not know at the time that the nomination form gets there, because we haven't hired, they're not hired yet, they haven't come in, they haven't signed up their enrollment forms, that I don't know whether they're married and gonna have a family plan, or a single and have a single plan, or have insurance through another spouse. We won't know that until after they're hired, so that, I don't know how I add that to the nomination form, but we can certainly look at it.
I would think just if it's a healthcare, what's the word I'm looking for? Available position. I'm looking for exposure.
Yeah.
Exposure.
Ken?
Yes, Cindy?
Under the warrants, I noticed this several times. the teachers will take a course in January, and then in February, they'll notify this board that they're retiring. Now, isn't there something that we can do to, and this has happened several times. If you're retiring, why are we paying them to take a course and they're gonna leave us in 3 months?
Well, you could bring that up in negotiations, but, you know, we're kind of, our hands are tied by what benefits they're entitled to in the contract, and there is no restrictions on taking courses in your last year of employment or anything like that. It's equal no matter when you're, for what year.
Leon?
I just want to say, that nomination form, I think you brought it up 2 or 3 times before, and what we needed to be able to do, I mean, he individually brought it. I really don't want that information and don't want to see anybody waste their time on it. But from a board perspective, if we're gonna raise that, then as the chair, you need to gain consensus to be able to say, this is a task that we want the administrators to do, and vote on it and have them do it, or vote on it and don't have them do it, as opposed to having to come back again, and then we discuss it and come back again, and so forth along this line. If he can convince everybody in here that it's necessary to be able to see that, and we got a benefit out of it, and so forth along that line, yeah, it's something that all the board ought to wanna endorse and say, give it to the administrators and then do it, as opposed to just letting it come out in the comment.
There's a nomination form here for $45, and then some details as to caps, et cetera. Another nomination for $15 an hour. And as the board, all we care about is the total budgetary impact. That's all I'm saying. That $15 an hour, I'm not sure if that, I mean, at 2,000 hours a year, that's $30,000. $45 an hour at 2,000 hours is a $90,000 job, but it's not because it's capped. It's something else. So just whatever that actual number estimate, just, I'm not looking for an auditable number. I'm just looking for, you have to read all this, like this says salaries. One here simply says salary, $15 per hour, and it's a 1.0. So that's 1.0. Is that 2,080 hours, or is that who knows what it is? But I'm just saying, as a board, I think we should just be interested in how much this impacts the budget annually.
Jim, why don't you and your staff see if there isn't something that we can find that would maybe not include all the things that he wants, but some of this on there, and come up with something.
I agree, but then I over here, I have Leon saying, unless the board gives us a consensus direction that,
Yeah.
that they want that, then we would be glad to act that out. But if I understand in simplest terms, what could make this simple is if we put an hourly rate in the future, you would like an estimate, because it's done on one of them, I agree, I see that on
It's
one.
inconsistent.
It says, $45 an hour as submitted by timesheet up to $17,161.
Big difference of 90.
On the $15 per hour one, you would like to see some type of estimate of what that is going to be a budget impact for the year, is that?
Correct. And for the board, it's an estimate. That's not the hard end. So from one to the other, this is a
I'm
$20,000
gonna look at
job.
Joy, is that something that we could add?
This is a $90,000 job, this is a $50,000 job.
I'm looking at Joy, she says that we can add that on future, we'll try and remember to do that. I mean, Leon's point is valid, and I appreciate him saying it, you know, we get different questions, different opinions for everybody, to get a consensus is tough, but I think we can make that minor adjustment and hopefully satisfy you, and I'm getting a nod that we could try that, okay.
Ray?
Karen's been wanting to say something, and then I have a question.
No, you go first, Ray.
My question is, I can't tell from this nomination form for Donna Leep whether this is just a short-term appointment to the end of this year?
It's this school year, yes. So
After
it's not a permanent position. I'm not ready to address what happens next year. We don't have a set budget. So it's to give me further
Thank you.
assistance in this school year.
Karen?
I just wanted to respond, Jim, to your concern about retirements, and I can speak for Wendy and myself. We have found ourselves in situations when we've had either mostly resignations, or have had open positions that we have left open because we have not had the need at the time. So we either have filled mid-year, or I know last year I had a position that was open that I did not fill because I expected I needed it. So I just wanted to reassure you that we're just not filling for the sake of filling.
Thank you.
The other thing I just wanted to point out is Carol Poppy, who is on the retirement list, is actually a speech and language pathologist. Just a correction there for the minutes.
Okay, any more questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all in favor? Okay, unanimous. Thank you.
Can I ask for oppose?
Oh, sorry, opposed? I didn't see any.
Abstain.
You opposed?
No, abstain.
Abstain, I'm sorry, abstain. Okay, any new business?
No.
No, okay. Policies, there's, policy 5085, search and seizure. We need a motion to warn it.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Now, again, we've been asked by a citizen to see if we can get some clarification from the state about the patting down of students, if they have a, the policy, if they, should be the same sex, there's no question about that. Location, you can take all these things under advisement, and I'm
Right.
sure Ms. Mulholland will come to the meeting and she'll give you more information or what she's looking for too,
I have it down.
okay? Okay, can we have a motion to warn this,
We did.
oh, we did, okay.
Yeah, you did already.
All in favor of warning, unanimous? Okay, now superintendents.
Nope, I'm not gonna give you a report tonight, we're gonna go.
All right, now we're going back to the budget.
Back to our budget session. I have a couple of handouts for you from our Secretary of Education. One that I know you all received. It said it went to all board members electronically, but just in case it didn't, there you go. This is probably as good a time as any of the second. Why don't we let that one go off first? That discussion going. And Jim, you'll see here, number one thing, the teacher retirement bubble right there, what exactly you're saying, pleading with school boards to be aware of the substantial number of educators who appear to be retiring, and encouraging us to use the retirement as an opportunity to think about staffing levels and patterns in the way that we hire.
Great minds think alike.
I'll be going to the Vermont Superintendent's Association winter meeting on Thursday, and she's the guest speaker. I will share with her that you feel that great minds think alike. So. Did everyone get one? Does there anyone need a copy back there? So we are taking a lot of this into consideration, and she is speaking in general terms for the state of Vermont. We're not seeing that, some of these, we're seeing enrollment drops, but nowhere near to the rate that she's talking about that they're seeing in other areas of Vermont. The other thing that's come to our attention, Ken had asked me to talk about this in my report, and I'm not going to give you a report, but this is a budget issue. Some of you have heard about the ongoing question about busing versus supervisory union. Pownell provides their own transportation, owns their own buses. We got a memorandum from the secretary, I want to say back in November, telling us that due to Act 166 of 2010, starting on July 1st, 2014, this past July, supervisory unions are responsible for providing transportation. So we were thinking up until a memo that came out last week, which I'm going to pass out now, that was impacting Pownell only. When you see this and you read this latest memo dated January 8th, it could affect all the supervisory union. In the simplest of terms, the supervisory union budget might have to grow again to encompass transportation passed through the supervisory union. We're gonna need to get a lot of clarification from the Agency of Education. There is somebody from the Agency of Education going to the Pownell board meeting this month. It should be interesting. I'm hoping that the Secretary of Education will address answer some more of these questions at the meeting that I'll be attending on Thursday. But on a quick read of this, it seems like all our towns might need to get a waiver from the Agency of Education for us to continue to run our buses the way we do now, because we bill, Dufour is billing Shaftesbury directly, not the SVSU. And if you read this ruling, it's saying that unless you have a waiver, you're not gonna get your transportation reimbursement money. That all transportation reimbursement money has to go through the SU, so the billing has to go through the SU. Yeah, I'm just unfortunately the messenger here, so, and you know what they say about messengers, right? So,
Yes.
this could impact our budget discussion, and that's you know, the concern that Rick and I are having here tonight, and it's last minute. We want to get the SVSU budget passed so that you know what your assessments are in your own towns, so that you can get your budget worked on. But this is a wrinkle that we need to discuss, and we don't have all the answers. So I'll begin the reopening of the budget hearing with that.
Jim, I'd like to come back to this transportation. I think as a supervisory union, as a board, that we should take a position on this on behalf of Pownell first, and on behalf of all the other districts. So I would, my position is that we should discuss it and vote as a group that we support the way the arrangement is for Pownell, and let that information go on to this agency, and then we tackle the second part, which is if we're all doing it wrong, then we should do that. But I think you should go there, I think you should go to that meeting with our support behind it. That's my position.
And that would be the process, even to apply for a waiver. Superintendent doesn't apply, the superintendent applies for the waiver on behalf of the supervisory union as a result of a vote that the supervisory union takes to grant, that they support Pownell getting a waiver. So that's how it
So
works.
can we do that this evening?
You could. They're gonna ask us to back up with financials that which we're not prepared to do right now, that it is, one, cheaper for Pownell, and two, cheaper for the supervisory union as a whole for them to continue operating the way it is.
Well, how much time do you need to do that?
Just say it.
Well, I just don't want to miss a deadline as far as the state's concerned.
I think George just wants to show support
You
of
could
his
take-
board.
You could take a vote to say you're in favor of applying for a waiver, and, we can go that route, and they'll probably reject it and say, prove it, and that could start the ball rolling that way.
Fine.
No, let's do it.
Make a motion, we do that. Make
Second.
a motion, we do that.
To make a motion?
Okay,
I'll
George
second
makes
it.
a motion that we support
A waiver for.
a waiver for Pownell's busing situation. Have a second?
I second that.
Seconded. Okay, any discussion? All in favor?
Thank you.
So unanimous.
Thank
So
you.
when you have that gentleman coming down, or the lady coming, tell them the board supports you in your endeavor to keep your two
Definitely share
buses.
that with him.
And we don't know what impact that is for the other, a waiver for the other towns in the supervisory union will be simpler, because the wording says, the supervisory union provides the transportation or arranges for the transportation. So you could say we're already arranging it, but this is all still very new, very new.
May I ask a question? Is it possible, is it just the fact that SVSU is not paying the bus drivers? I mean, is it that simple? Like, we can keep our buses, keep our own drivers, but yet they get paid through SVSU? Is that I guess I don't understand this political situation.
It's causing them more work. They gotta set up whole new accounts, they
Yeah.
gotta bill and pass, all that. It's a lot
I
of-
know.
Jim's right. I mean, literally, this was written January 8th. I saw it for the first time this morning. Now, I've been aware of the situation since the law passed in 2010, I think it was. But the language is fairly vague, you know,
Very
provide or arrange. Myself personally, as well as a number of my counterparts, asked numerous times, what's the definition of arrange? And they wouldn't give us an answer, wouldn't give us an answer. All of a sudden, this memo comes out in the fall, where, okay, that's one thing. This memo is even more
Vague,
restricted. Well,
very vague.
This is much more restricted than what they sent us in November.
this is much more restrictive. I mean, I think, and what's personally bothering me, and maybe I shouldn't, but it does, that I usually have a pretty good ear to the ground and know when something's gonna hit my desk before it hits my desk. I had no clue this was coming. So, I stepped back a little bit to say that, so, usually I know this ahead of time and I'm able to research stuff and I have a pretty good idea before it hits my desk what's gonna happen. So I've literally had, 10 minutes of opportunity to read through this. I think at the end of the day, what may satisfy everybody is, yes, the Pownell bus drivers may have to be SVSU employees. The problem with our consolidated contract we have with the other three districts is, it's actually a contract with the bus company and those three districts. I think that's gonna have to change to an SU contract. It's not gonna cost anybody any more money. It's just gonna be a bigger headache for me in my office. I gotta chase these dollars 2 or 3 times now to prove to the state what we're doing.
Well, I do,
Because the concern is the reimbursement going to the SVSU.
And that's gonna pose a whole nother wrinkle, because I'm assuming, and again, I'm just reading between the lines, that if they're heading down this path, they're not gonna send me 4 checks, say SVSU on behalf of Pownell, SVSU on behalf of Shasberry. They're gonna send me 1 check,
check.
and we're gonna get in an arm wrestling match here in the middle, trying to figure out who wants what money out of that check. Now, we can probably go
But
back
what do
and we
you
can
do
probably
now?
parse it out.
what do you do now?
Well, you should be
I
able to,
mean,
you should be able to figure
yes.
out by how it was billed out.
No, what we do
Yeah, that's
now.
not, I don't see that as a problem, because that's happening now.
Well, not really. What we do now is Pownell reports their cost and Pownell gets their reimbursement.
Okay,
And then another question is, okay, so even if we can do all the, the to and from transportation, what about all the field trips and the van trips? And
that's what Pownell's worried about.
how are we gonna?
That's why we want our
How are
own
we gonna
vehicles.
take care of that? Who's responsible for that? Because I'm not sure this is clear. I'm assuming it means all transportation. But I don't, again, I haven't had the answer. So it's clearly a wrinkle, as Jim said, and,
Rick.
the end of the day, it's a net sum zero. Because even if I do, just pick on Shasberry for a second, because they're here, they've got a budget of whatever it is, $80,000 Instead of being in line item 330 for a contracted service, it's gonna be in a code 530 for an assessment to me that I'm gonna pay on their behalf. So it's kinda like the audits were a couple of years ago when we did those. We sucked them out of your budgets, we had to put them, again, same law, had to put them into the SU. It's a net sum zero, but it arbitrarily looks like the SU's budget's well, it is growing. But it's growing by false numbers because it's just a pass-through.
Rick, do you remember the last meeting that we had at the superintendent's office in which Larry Johnson brought up the business of mandates? Here's an interesting mandate that at the end is gonna cost us more money, because the next thing will be that more staff is gonna be needed to administer what this is. So I'm saying that
Well, I
we
re-
really should we really should fight this thing. Even if we have to fight it legally, we should fight this request and start off by asking for the waiver and then following it up. I mean, why are we afraid to sue them or do it? I don't understand where we're coming from.
I have taxpayers right now have called me so many times
Yeah.
and said, if you need a petition, we're out, we're gonna walk 74 miles.
Ironically, after Jim and
They'll
I
walk
had the
it.
conversation, he took one of my staffers away for your 0% budget. An hour later, he gave me this. I went back and said, "You can't
Yeah.
take it. I need it."
This is, so, let's get the waiver going and let's get ready to roll up our sleeves and fight this thing.
But obviously, back in 2010, our legislators voted and passed this. That's,
They probably passed it, didn't even know
You know
what
what
they
they
were
did.
passing.
could have
probably
been
didn't
attached
read
to
it.
something else. I mean, that's another concern.
Well,
And one thing that we talked about, and this is a budget meeting, so the intent is to save money. That, somebody somewhere feels that by consolidating transportation through one source, there's a savings for the whole. And that's the theory behind it. Is it actual? Is that true?
No.
I don't know. Things seem to be working pretty well the way they are right here. And I'm hearing would want to be left alone. It's going to be a challenge to take that on. And it'll start with Pownell at your January meeting, when the gentleman, whose last name is on the bottom here, Vaughn Altimus, is coming from the Age of Education. This is the area that he oversees, so he will be in Pownell. I spoke at length with him. I told him he should expect a warm reception, and then it'll, now, this, and that was before we got this letter. The conversation with Vaughn was before that we got this letter. So now it could change things here too, so we're gonna deal with it then. And I'll take your vote. I'll see if I can draft a letter for
Thursday.
Waiver.
a request for a waiver, but I'm not sure it'll go anywhere other than a rejection or asking us then to provide the documentation on why we're doing it.
Let's do it, let's just do it then.
Can I call the question?
I think it was already voted.
We've already voted.
We've already
We have a
voted.
vote.
It
Yeah.
passed,
All right.
we supported Pownell.
Fine.
Thank you, George.
All right.
Yep, it was unanimous, and we said thank you, and we had the vote. So back to our budget, if I recap where we were at the end of our last budget session. There was some discussion on whether it's 2.9, Leon was saying leave it there. Cindy wants 2.75, which is about another $33,000. Where that comes from, we don't know at this time, but if that gets the deal done, then we'll have to cut it from the bottom line and inform you where that's gonna come out of, but we don't have that sitting here tonight. And I guess, Mr. Chairman, we're back open to discussion.
More discussion on it? We did have a straw vote, last meeting of the budget, and it went down 4-3, excuse me. But now we have the whole SVSU board, so it makes the number a little bit larger. The only thing that bothers Bennington is that, again, we are at 6.1% increase, which is pretty large. And it would be nice to know what this adjustment of the 33,000 would bring that down to, if it would bring it down below 6.
As a statistical convenience, I happen to I think in the budget, there's 1,400 little line items in here. And 33,000 divided by 1,400 is 23 bucks. What if we take 20 bucks off every item just to get the math right? I'm serious.
Yeah.
Just take 20 bucks off of every item on the list, and we got our $30,000. It's the equal sharing of misery. Everybody, gets a little nick. That's the end of it. I'm not in favor of it.
Our salary, I gotta ask for some, are salary line items to the exact dollar, or do they have $23? Because then you could be underfunding salary line items.
For those collective bargaining agreements that are settled, it is to the dollar to the collective bargaining agreement. The teachers is unsettled, so there's an estimate in there based on the direction the board gave me a while back. And just so you know, the majority of those line items, again, are sped, and I would have to hit them, not to say that I couldn't hit them for 40, but, you know, I'd have to hit them for 50 cents on the dollar, so.
Oh, I see, yeah. And I respectfully disagree with my colleague with 2 points. I don't see 2.75, 2.95, it's just, it's, I don't see much difference. Just offering a possible solution.
Any more comments on 275, 295?
Well, you can ask, how do we get, somebody just said go to 275, and that's what I'm saying. We're just a number that we wanted to get to. It wasn't that it really had a significant, value to it in terms of the services. And what I see is that everybody tried to look at what the services were and get them down to what they thought they could get them down to, and if as close as possible to that 2.75 is 2.95, and I'm saying, let's move on.
And that is what happened. We struggled to get to that dollar amount, and we knew we didn't hit the target that, you had given us, but we also felt, and maybe we were incorrect, that it wasn't a hard target, it was just that, a target. And we felt that we got pretty close, and we got within 33,000, I think we're very close to that.
So do we need to make a motion to accept the budget? Yeah, I can do that now.
Yeah.
So I move that we accept the budget with an increase of 2.95% for the SVSU budget as presented,
Okay, motion, do we have a second?
That's a net assessment increase.
with the net assessment increase. So you can put the right words to it.
Second.
Do we have a second? Okay, Woodford. Discussion. Woodford. Seeing no discussion, all in favor of the budget with the 2.95 increase, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3.
Wow.
Okay, against? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Wow.
Fails.
Abstentions?
Okay.
Can we do the against again, please?
Against Larry, George, Fran, and Cindy. Okay, can we have a motion then on the 2.75?
What was the vote?
4-3 down.
4 to 3, no.
No. Okay, next one would be the 275.
I'll make the motion that we,
I don't think everybody was counted.
Yeah, isn't there abstention on that one? Was there, how many are supposed to be voting?
There should be 8 votes, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're missing a vote. I've got 7 votes. Somebody not vote?
Okay, how many,
The chair.
how many in favor of the two?
Chair.
The chair didn't vote.
No, I don't, did you vote in favor or opposed?
I voted for it.
No, so that's 4 to 4.
4. So you can break it.
I'll ask the chair to vote.
Okay, against. So fails. 5-4. Okay, now we need a motion for the 275.
I'll make a motion that the SVSU come forward with a budget at no more than 2.75.
Okay, a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second. Now discussion?
I
Do
just,
we know where it's coming from before we vote on it?
You're $20 a line item.
That's, we'll leave that up.
2312 or something. like that.
2312.
just clarify the motion, it's still the net assessment
assessment.
number.
Yeah.
It's 2.75 of expenditures, that's a big different deal.
Where we come from, I can sit here and tell you right now, I would try to keep it out of special ed, because you already have heard repeatedly how it would have to be 66,000 to cut it out of special ed. So it's gonna come out of some line item that is, or multiple line items that will spread it over the non-special ed and early childhood parts that, so probably, we'd look at areas like maybe tuition reimbursement or so something like that. I'm thinking off the top of my head, can we come up with an additional $33,000 in cuts? I'm sure we can. I would sit here and tell you that I wish I didn't, but if, as I said earlier, if that will get this passed so we can move on with the assessments, then we'll find it. And it will not be coming from special ed because of the double impact of that.
Okay, any other questions about the 2.75? Cutting 33,000 to bring it to that point. Seeing none, all in favor of the 2.75 increase in the SVSU budget? Raise your hand.
SVSU net assessments.
And assessment, okay.
Whoa.
In favor.
In favor?
We're in
Of the two-
favor of the 2.75. So everybody that voted no should have their hand
They
up.
want a lower number, they want a lower number.
No, we
No.
just wanna know where it is. That's what he's saying.
One,
No one's voting, I'll vote.
okay, just two people?
Confused.
Okay, against,
Oh, my.
against the 2.75?
Against the 275.
Well, nobody, who made the motion? You were just saying it.
Yeah.
Nobody, somebody needs to
The-
make
the
the motion.
against-
I
No,
did.
she made
Oh,
the
you made
motion.
it.
I made the
You
motion.
want less?
Yeah.
No.
He still wants 0.
I'll tell you, I probably won't vote for the SVSU budget, only for the simple reason, I'm sick and tired of sitting here every single year. This has nothing to do with the superintendent or anybody, it's our state. We keep getting screwed every year, and we expect to go out to the taxpayers every year. Oh, well, we gotta have these damn mandates gotta go away. They gotta fund them. We can't keep doing this every year. So, I mean, for that reason is why I won't vote for it. Has nothing to do with educating our kids. I want to educate our kids. But we've got a hammer on top of our heads, and they're telling us we're gonna do this no matter what, or we're gonna take your damn funding away. I'm sick and tired of sitting here going through this every single year. And the legislators are not doing enough. Some are, some aren't. You hear the same damn jargon every single meeting. When do we start pushing back? And I hear the superintendent, what he's saying, he's right. But I'm telling you, the people can't even afford to live in their own damn houses. They can't afford to fix their houses because they keep spending money on education that's not funded by, should be funded by the state anyway, or find a different, so they've had 25 years to figure out how the hell to reorganize this thing so it won't fall on the backs of the taxpayers. When do I think all boards, SVSU, ZEMI, I don't care, everywhere in this damn state ought to have had enough and say, what are you gonna do for us? Maybe nobody pays their damn taxes, then what are they gonna do? That's too bad. It'd be nice if we could get people not to do that, to make a statement. Unfortunately, our kids are in the middle of all this stuff, but how do you change it? I don't know. Has anybody got any ideas of how we do it? You guys must be getting sick and tired of every year we're going through this, of what do we put out to the taxpayers? I can tell you, Shasbury's looking at an 8-cent increase. That's crazy, but that's where we're at. I don't know what to do, and I'm very, very frustrated as a board member.
You got a motion on the floor.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway.
So the motion
Okay,
is
so
for
let's-
2.75.
Yeah, let's go. For the BA, this is for the SVSU budget with the increase to 2.75, and Rick?
Net assessment.
Net assessment.
Net
Net
assessment.
Who was
assessment.
the second, Richard?
I seconded.
Cindy and Rick. Okay, all in favor of going with the 2.75 increase? Raise your hand. We got 3 people, okay? Against? 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 4, 6 against.
I'm
Failed.
confused. I don't understand
Because
how
like my against
at
is for
2.9,
2.95.
I had 4 people voting for it, and then 2.75, only 3. I don't understand.
Neither do I.
Neither do I.
Neither do I.
I was consistent.
It doesn't make any sense. All those that just voted against the 2.75, are you all in favor of the 2.95?
No.
No.
In favor of less than 275.
That's the book here.
And here I'm feeling bad because I'm asking them to cut 33,000. I don't know. I don't know. It's tough.
At least want the opportunity to look at what that, to have a visual
reference to what that looks like. And I understand what Jim is saying.
Well, then what
and I don't
number
think
you-
the onus is on him, I think it's on
No.
us.
What number are you
Yeah,
looking at?
what are we looking for? We've gotta get something.
Increase, what we asked for.
Oh, zeros.
And Shasberry just went through this. We asked for that, we got exactly what we asked for. We got a sheet that outlined what could be cut, a recommendation of what would like to be left in place, and another recommendation of don't go there. And Shasberry chose to include the two items that were in question. That's all we're asking for, is to look at that same format.
And the only way to do that, Larry, is to give you the names of positions to do it.
I understand that, Jim. But it's not an onus on you, it's an onus on the board. If they choose to, we're asking you, the same charge that, was answered in North Bennington's request. It was outlined, a charge. That, it was a charge given to the administration, hasn't been met.
Well, I'm gonna disagree that it hasn't been met, because I told you what the dollar amount is and how many positions have to go. And, so I've given you what that looks like, Nate. The next step for that is to give you where those positions are gonna be, and that would involve naming people, which if this board is not gonna go with a 0% budget, which I don't see how you can operate at a 0% budget, and I think that is a cruel thing to do to people, to put jobs, and I think I'm gonna lose good people if you do that.
Well, we're being asked by the taxpayer to show us what you're doing, you know, show us where these cuts could be, and make sure that you've looked at it. That's all they're asking, is so that they can better understand our position.
Could we come up with,
The board's feeling, just one voice here.
yeah, I was gonna say, 275 seems too much, and I can see the point of the superintendent about morale and trying to keep the system working. Is there another number less than 275, that we can, but it's not zero, that we can ask the superintendent to come back with?
It's up to, I've made my statement, if somebody else has a number and the majority can agree to that, then
I think percentages, setting percentages and cutting your budget to that percentage is not how you build a budget. You build a budget by what the costs are to operate a school system, and that's where I feel where we are. And that's, I don't know how many times I can repeat that.
I have a couple of details. So the adjustment pool, what is that, Rick? There's an adjustment pool on every department, what's that?
That's salary adjustment for what you heard public comments from earlier this evening, that we have to do our salary study and adjustments for employees who are below market rate or competitive rates for those salaries, for those positions.
So, that doesn't have to happen, it'd be great if it happened. I support that, but, and the other one, you said,
you add those up to?
I did it at home, but not here. It's a nice, it's a 75, 80.
80s plus.
About 80,000.
Okay, this tuition reimbursement, it's 165,000, and it is down, it's 265,000. It was 270,
You
so
see
is
that we
that,
have made cuts in that
Yeah,
already
yeah.
this year.
is there room more in there, or if you just,
I think we're pretty close to what we actually spend on that, you'd have to ask, I mean, that.
can you
that's
say no to a
variable, so-
teacher like they're saying? No?
Yes,
Can you say no to a teacher?
I have
if it
there-
doesn't fit the,
Yeah. Could I say no? I mean, by contract, they're entitled to 6 credits a year, 2 courses at the UVM rate. And it's supposed to align with our professional development goals of the district and their students. So could I say, no, that particular course doesn't align with the professional development goals? Yes, but then they're free to go find another course to do it. So I can't say, no, you can't.
Okay, and the other biggest increase is Frank. There's nothing left, Frank? The biggest increase for this,
I actually been rethinking letting go of the one technician that I let go, that I took out of the budget that I had asked for. It'd be really hard, but I have, since you asked me a question, since you've been very creative in making recommendations, Jim, I'd like to follow up with one that you probably will all not like either, but it is a way to consider, and I already know you're gonna say no to this, but have you thought about, our kids go 5 more days a year than every other kid in the state. They could go 4 more days instead of 5 if we were able to prorate the salaries, and that becomes a negotiation point. I don't know if it does, and you'd save all the money that you need right there. If we did that, and keeping well, I don't know what's going on with negotiations, but that would be the first step. You could save your money there, and if you actually took off 5 days, we'd probably make money. Just a thought.
Okay, Rick is up 36,000. That's a nice number.
The students go 180 days, the state law is 175.
75.
Yeah, so we're 5 days over what the state minimum is.
Workshop.
No, the students are actually here for 180 days, then the staff is here for another 7.5 days beyond that for professional.
8.5, I believe.
Yeah, and, I don't know how that would affect, I'd have to go back and read the contract. I mean, those are salaries for what the school year is, and
It's a
I don't think
negotiated-
it
it's a
talks about
negotiated
days,
item.
so you would have to.
It's a negotiated
Yeah,
item.
So I don't think it would be an automatic prorating down if you took the 5 days.
No.
It was subject to negotiations.
Right, but we could probably negotiate $33,000 out of all of those salaries somehow.
Or more.
I just saw on TV where the city of Boston is adding 40 minutes to the kids' day every day, starting second semester. They feel it's important for the kids to get more time in their education.
I think it's important for the kids to
We're
get
trying,
more quality time.
the code numbers are the 100, the 100 items are the ones we have to work on. I can't see anything. I mean, curriculum is down. Tech department is up.
Is there any other direction that we can give the superintendent and business manager besides zero?
Yeah, and let me say, I'll go back to what Leon said. That was not a vote by this committee to come back and give a zero. That was people, at a budget meeting saying, the same with like 2.75 and zero. That was a consensus reached by some. I don't even know if it was everybody here. It's not like, I don't recall a vote that said, a 0% budget. Do I have members of this committee who wanted us to come back with that? Yes, but, so that's another difficult thing for me to operate in, that, and again, I don't think that's a way to build a budget, but.
Okay, so who voted for 2.95? Let me see that again. 1, 2, 3. There's 3 of us.
4.
It was 4 that voted for.
Leon was before.
Leon voted for 2. So we need,
So if Cindy added her 275, that should have been the 5th one. If everybody held on plus Cindy, that should have been the majority.
so at 295, of 33,000, how much of that is on Pony?
The interesting thing is this, going back to the point that Fran brought up, I don't think that there's anybody at this table that is against better education. Fran is bringing up what's happening in Shasberry.
2005.
George Sleeman and Ken
$2,300.
Swihard are bringing up
$2,600.
what's happened in Bennington School District. I'm only concerned that whatever we pass here is now added to the Bennington School District budget. And the Bennington School District budget, as you know, what's happened the last couple of years, goes down. And so we have to start chopping at the elementary level. I'm not against anything that's in this budget. I'm only concerned getting the elementary budget passed. And it doesn't look good with the rate that I'm seeing. It's not that I'm against anything that's in this budget. That's my concern. That's where I'm coming from.
So if we go to zero.
I don't care whether
that
it's,
saves Bennington $20,000. So you're 66% of the 30. So
Right.
One question, I think the last meeting we had, Jim O'Connor and I and some other people talked about the fact that we're mixing two different sorts of things. We're mixing up the direct bill assessments, which are mostly for special ed services, which, as the chart shows you, is slightly under 50% of this budget, right?
No, that's the cost increase. Look at the other.
The cost increase, sorry. Right. And then we're confusing that with the things that we get assessed for based on an equalized pupil basis across the whole SU. As I recall from that discussion, Rick said that the increase, the portion of the budget that was strictly administrative as opposed to service-oriented toward special ed kids and early childhood kids was 20%, right?
Yeah, roughly.
Roughly. So have we, in this chart of reductions that we had from last week, which amounted to $108,000, almost $109,000, have we exhausted all we can do with that part of the budget, which is the part that actually directly affects each district based on the number of pupils they have?
I'm not sure I can appropriately answer that. That would be a function of Wendy and the principals. You're talking about the sped portion of the budget?
No, I'm talking about just the
20%.
the administrative
Oh.
elements that are directly assessed out to the districts on equalized pupil as opposed to direct bill.
Proportionally assessed out.
Proportionally assessed
Yeah,
out.
direct would be a sped,
I'm sorry, that's my mistake.
proportionally assessed.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy for, I can speak for my department, with the exception of the salary adjustments. There's very little else there, without losing a staff member.
Well, this is a 2.1 million increase on this pie chart. 20% of that is 42 or $3,000, right?
400.
I believe you. I didn't do the math, but I believe you.
And I looked at this chart and, there's, on page 1 of it, there's 36,500 down to the end of the tech department. Then it starts into special ed.
I mean, if you look at that increase, if you look at that $2.1 million increase, I'll draw your attention to, the admin, curriculum, which are already down, finance, human resources, and tech. So, I'm just doing it in my head, but that's totaling 8, 9, so that's about 7, that's about 7% of this total increase. Of departments that make up roughly 20% of the total budget. So you're, I don't know what the analogy I want to use is, you're squeezing a smaller pea out of a.
You're trying to squeeze a lot out of a very small space.
And,
Maybe, I may have the numbers wrong, but most of this has got to come from early childhood or special ed.
Oh, no, not to stay with the conversation.
Of that $2.1 million, those two items are
Direct bill.
1.95. Yeah, I'm doing that in my head. Isn't that close?
9.7, there.
1.9, yeah, roughly $2 million.
Yeah.
Yep.
And my friend across the table is the majority of the rest.
You know, it's too bad, I don't know if what I'm gonna say is even possible. If we were to vote whatever number we come up with tonight to give the administration the green light to go ahead, is there any way, if we lose our elementary budgets, that we can come back as a unit to the supervisory union and look for the cuts, which are gonna have to be done?
Done it before.
What would it do? It would save us from making the very cuts that our superintendent doesn't wanna make at the central, that we're gonna have to make at the elementary. So I'm saying, if everybody sitting around this table is saying, okay, let's go with whatever number we can agree on tonight, with the understanding that if Shasberry or Bennington or Woodford or Pownell loses its budget, that this group sitting around the table is gonna come back and make the decision that we aren't gonna make the cuts on our elementaries, that we'll make the cuts on the central, on this budget. And if we go with that, I got no problem, I'll vote.
It sounds good, but
Can't say that.
some of those cuts, if we cut the SU, will impact the elementary, because the bulk.
I
the
know
bulk
that,
of the money-
but otherwise, we aren't gonna go anywhere.
Yeah.
We're gonna be here all night, because we're at a stalemate.
I agree.
But I
think
don't
that's
wanna
possible.
vote a budget in, and then get shot down at Shasberry, Pownell, or Bennington, and then say, oh, we've got to eliminate 3 teachers in Shasberry, 2 teachers in Bennington, 2 teachers in Pownell, and this budget stays the
As long
same.
as you understand that the SU will make the cut, but it could be in special ed at that point, they could then,
Well, that's up
the
to,
Bennington Elementary might lose a special ed teacher.
Well-
Because it's through the SU
Well,
budget. That-
no,
That
it-
would be a scenario.
it wouldn't lose it unless this group voted it.
Right. But it's not, if somebody's budget goes down, you gotta make the cuts. You've heard the analogies being made. There really isn't enough left in the non-direct bill part of the budget that's, depending on how far we have to cut. But I think we certainly make that commitment. Why wouldn't we? That this board would come back if somebody's budget goes down, that we all look to share the pain.
Well,
And I'm told
because it
it's
didn't
happened
happen.
before.
Because it didn't happen.
But you say it hasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Well, not very much.
They asked
Not
but
very
didn't- they asked
much,
but
Rick.
didn't receive.
I didn't
No,
say how much.
no, my fellow board members, no, you didn't.
I like to soften what George is saying. If any member district gets their budget voted down, the supervisory union board of directors agrees to reopen this budget, to reopen this budget. We're not gonna agree right now to any outcomes, but we'll reopen it. Okay, and everything's on the table to fight over again. Okay?
I think that's reasonable.
Just reopen. I mean, whether we go up or down or sideways, we can't agree to give you all of it. So we
No, but any board can plead their case, just like North Bennington has. This board has shown reason that way.
Well, but the point I wanted to make to my board members is that we want more than a slap on the wrist. I mean, and maybe all our budgets are gonna pass, that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping Shasberry gets theirs, I'm hoping we get ours, but if not, we wanna share the pain with everybody, not just Bennington.
I'd like to make a motion.
Jim,
I'd like to make a motion that we pass this budget at 2.95% increase with the stipulation that if any member district's budget is voted down, that this board of directors will reopen this budget. Stated about right?
you have a second?
Second.
Second. Discussion. No discussion, all in favor of Jim's motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay? Against? 1. Ram.
Move with
Motion carries 7-1.
I can get a blank check.
I do need an executive session.
But I-
We're gonna come back here and open it up.
We didn't get the warrants to sign.
Warrants to sign, Rick? Yes.
Just under other, is there any protocol to follow up on these mandates? If I was to contact the VSBA or the Department of Education or anything else and start putting together a list of these things? I worked for the state, and one of the things I learned is that they've got stuff out there they don't even know is still out there. So,
I've asked the same from the Vermont Superintendent's Association. Someone has generated that list, so
They
put
are
it
working on
out on the list, or, yeah, that, we can get that from that last meeting, but by all means, the Vermont School Board Association might have it too, if you want to contact them.
I can do that
Yeah.
without going
You take unfunded mandates or mandates?
through. Mandates, period.
The whole title's a mandate. Providing public education, special
Here,
federal mandate. It's all
State.
I just wanted, since one of our longstanding early childhood employees is on the retirement list, I wanted to publicly thank Carol Poppy for about 30 years of service, working in the early childhood department as a speech pathologist. We're gonna miss her. She's very dedicated. So I just wanted that to be part of the public minute.
Thank you.
So we need an executive session for
Okay, can we have a
personnel
motion to go into executive
contracts.
session? Motion second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor? Unanimous.